Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for coming to today's webinar titled Resume and Cover Letter Workshop, presented by Natalie Timla, a job skills counselor with the YMCA of GTA. So to go over some housekeeping, the webinar will run for about an hour and may go over depending on how many questions we get at the end. If you have a question, please type it into the question box found on your screen. Just a reminder, this section is pre-recorded, so the Q&A at the end will be live, but questions won't be answered until then. If you have questions specific to your situation, for example, you really want to know how to write your resume specifically for a job that you are looking for, please ask one of our information and referral specialists via our email or our live chat. And the webinar recording will be uploaded within 48 hours after the presentation is concluded. You can view it on our platform by going to the Videos tab and selecting Webinar Recordings. So if you've never used GoToWebinar before, clicking the orange button will hide or unhide the interface for you. From the audio window, you can choose whether you want to connect with your computer audio or if you'd like to use your phone for audio. If you choose your phone, you'll be given some numbers to dial. Just follow the instructions on your keypad. Please make sure that if you're choosing computer audio that you've correctly chosen your speakers. If you've plugged in headphones, they might not have been selected by GoToWebinar. And if you have a question, please enter it into the question box, which will be answered again at the end of the webinar. So to go over some of Next Stop Canada's services, we have a live chat where you can talk to one of our information and referral specialists from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. EDT every weekday, sorry. We have personalized settlement plans. So when you sign up with us and you answer some questions about your needs and your personal information, we create a personalized plan to help you on your journey to Canada. We also have live webinars, which you're attending right now. We have 2 of them every week, so keep a lookout on our calendar. We have plenty of online resources, including articles, videos, these webinars, and e-learning courses, and so much more. We have an immigrants forum where you can connect with other newcomers to Canada and ask questions from one another. We also have a mentors forum, so we have established immigrants in different employment fields in Canada who will answer questions for you. And finally, we also have a youth program. So in the youth program, we have very similar services to what's available at Next Stop Canada, but targeted to those 19 and under. So a few reminders for our members. Please fill in your profile as accurately as you can. The more information you give us, the easier it is for us to help you. Once you've signed up with us, you should receive a welcome email. Please answer that, and please check your spam or your junk folders if you haven't received it yet. Once you do receive your settlement plan from us, please take the time to read it. If there's anything missing, if you have any more questions, you can let us know and we can adjust it for you. And finally, if you have any questions about PR or work permit processing times, anything related to sponsorship and immigration, please contact IRCC because we will not be able to answer those questions. Now to share some of our social media. If you're on Facebook, we have a closed group there. It's just for Next Stop Canada members. We're very active there, and the community is also very active. You can ask any questions, your concerns. If you just want to chat with people, there's a lot of people there. We also have a Next Stop Canada Youth closed Facebook group. Similar idea, but only for youth. We have a LinkedIn page if you'd like information about employment, job fairs, and the like. You can follow us there. And finally, we have our Next Stop Canada Twitter page where we post up-to-date immigration news. And so that's enough from me. I'm going to pass it off to today's presenter, Natalie.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the Resume and Cover Letter Writing Workshop. My name is Natalie, as mentioned, and I'm a job skills counselor for the YMCA of Greater Toronto. So what I'm going to do today is go over some key tips and techniques to consider when creating a resume and cover letter. So the first section of today's workshop is going to focus on resumes, and the second section is going to focus on cover letters. So in regards to resumes, the learning objectives includes understanding the importance and purpose of an effective resume, learn how to create an effective resume, and also learn how to target a resume towards a specific job using a job description. Okay, so a very important question is, what is a resume? So a resume is a written document that really tries to outline and describe your education, experience, your skills, and accomplishments, which is used to apply to jobs. So this is a document that demonstrates these things, including your education, experience, and accomplishments, as well as skills. It is a marketing tool to employers, and oftentimes it is your first impressions. So oftentimes you're not going to see an employer before you hand in a resume. Not in all cases, but just generally speaking. A resume is your self-advertisement, and it's a document that highlights your qualifications. So in regards to formatting tips, we do suggest to use clear, readable font. So that could include Arial or Times New Roman. Generally speaking, we suggest having a font size of 11 or 12. The page numbers for resumes, there's a lot of information that goes around, but generally speaking, we would suggest having a resume between 1 to 2 pages maximum. That being said, some employers will state on their website a specific maximum amount of pages to have for both your resume and your cover letter. So it is important to do some research before you submit your documents, but the general rule is no more than 2 pages. Or I should say the general suggestion is no more than 2 pages. You can include page numbers on your resume, and we suggest doing that at the bottom right corner, and especially if you are going to have more than 1 page for your resume. It's really important to make sure that there are no spelling mistakes or grammatical errors. And if you're not too sure, see if you can get somebody to help you to look over your resume to make sure that there's no mistakes on it. We suggest to list all of your work and volunteer experiences, especially those that are relevant to the job that you're trying to achieve. And it's always a really good practice to proofread your resume. So that can be something that you do, as well as seeing if somebody else can help you proofread your resume. If you are going to include things like bullet points, try to use bullet points that are more simple and kind of neat and clean. Your resume should be divided into sections. So we'll talk a bit about what sections to include in your resume. And we also suggest bolding important information or section titles, such as your objective, your career or job summary, skills, experience, education, and others. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is review some sections on the resume and provide some tips and techniques to consider when you're preparing each of these sections. So your contact information usually is at the top of your resume and should include your full name. So that's your first and last name, as well as your address. So I've heard of different things in regards to your address, including some people not wanting to place their address on their resume and some saying that it's essential to place. So keep in mind that if you don't place your resume, if you are applying to a company that has different locations, it might be more challenging for them to identify which location would be more suitable. But it would be at your discretion as to whether or not you'd like to include your address. And keeping in mind that some employers will state specifically what they want to see on the resume. So if you're not too sure, looking at the company's website to see if they have any instructions. Contact information, so it's important to make sure that your phone number and your email address are up to date. So make sure that your phone number is correct, that there's no missing numbers, and that you have an appropriate email address that you check frequently. So an example of an appropriate email address is what we have listed here, which is the first and last name of the applicant. Make sure your first and last name are in your header and that they are the largest words on the page. So we really want your name to stand out to the employer in a way that looks neat and professional. So some things to avoid on your resume includes your social insurance number. So we should never be putting our social insurance number on the resume. This is a piece of information that an employer will typically ask you once they have hired you. So it's not necessary when you're in the job search application process. Other things not to put on your resume includes your personal information, such as your birthday, age, height, marital status. These are some examples. Be as honest as you can, so avoid false information and focus on honesty. Avoid vague job titles, so provide a job title even if you are volunteering. An example could be animal care attendant volunteer. So that would be more specific than using just the term volunteer. Avoid using pictures, logos, or emojis. Generally speaking, we avoid I statements on resumes. And as mentioned before, just be mindful of the email address. So avoid any email address that could be perceived as inappropriate. Credit card number or banking information, none of those should be on the resume. And in regards to hobbies, we suggest only including hobbies that are relevant to the job you're trying to achieve. So there's a lot of information regarding resumes that you'll find online, but we try to summarize some of the key points. So what I'd like to do next is discuss the different types of resumes and then give some description in regards to those. So we have chronological listed here. This is a popular resume format, and it includes an objective, a career summary, a list of your experience from most recent to oldest. Then we have a functional resume. So if you are a youth looking for work, this might be more of a popular resume to use. It includes it highlights your abilities and skills. It's helpful for those with minimal work, and it provides a summarized work history, which can also include volunteerism if you don't have paid work experience. So again, this is one that a lot of youth, we usually suggest youth use, especially if they don't have a lot of work experience, because it focuses a lot more on skills versus experience. And we have gained skills throughout our lifetime. The last one listed here is hybrid. It combines the elements of a chronological and functional resume. It's also known as a combination resume. It provides information about relevant skills and all work history. So the ones that I have a lot more experience reviewing and suggesting includes the chronological resume and the functional resume. So now I'm just going to break down each of those resume types and provide an example of what it would look like. So this is for the chronological resume, and there's a sample listed there. The first section includes a career objective. And it states here that career objectives should be specific when possible and bold the position you want. So you can see there, it's kind of a bit difficult, but you can see that they have bolded resource consultant. They should tell you, they should tell you how you can benefit the company. So the career objective is a good place to state how you can benefit the company you're looking to apply to. You'll also see there the highlights of qualifications, which has many points regarding some skills and attributes that this applicant has to offer the employer. And then next to that, you'll see the relevant experience. So we suggest listing the job titles first. And the reason why is we believe the job title is more important. So what you did is more important than where you did it. And sometimes people will recognize job titles more than they will recognize a particular company. So as you can see there, this is listing the most recent job. It includes the position that this applicant has held from 2007 to present. It also gives some key and descriptive points underneath. And then underneath that employment resource consultant position, which is the first one listed, you'll see the job prior to that experience. In regards to education, you'll see education and certificates should list completion dates. Otherwise, state in progress. So some employers like to know how recent you received a credential. So that's why it's good to put the dates. But if you are still in school, you can always put the start date and that you're still working on completing that education or certification. We suggest not putting your references on your resume and just waiting until the employer is ready to see those references and then having it on a separate sheet. But you can let the employer know that you do have references by making a statement such as the one listed there, which states references available upon request. So as mentioned, the functional resume is a great tool, a good example of what you can use if you don't have a lot of experience, if you're still gaining volunteer and work experience. So we'll go through this section by section. The first one is, or the first section is the header, which includes the person's first and last name, as well as their address, their telephone, and an appropriate email address. They also have a career objective, so this person is specific as to what they're looking to achieve within a particular company. And then we have here summary of skills. So it says, note the summary of skills or highlights of qualifications section. This should change based on the job. So if you are looking for 3 different types of jobs, for example, maybe retail, food service, or childcare, it's really good to focus your skills that are more specific to the type of job you're looking to obtain. Then we have the relevant experience section, and the difference between this section and the chronological resume is that this is focusing more on your skills and kind of accumulating those skills under particular sections. So they have a clerical skills section for this applicant, and then an administrative skills section. And then the bullet points lists that person's experience and gives some examples of how they've gained or used those skills in the past. It says here, functional resumes should provide 1 to 2 relevant skills sections. So these skills should tie into or match what the employer is looking for. So to me, this resume is obvious that it's obvious to me that this resume is going to be used for an office job, maybe an administrative or clerical role, because the person has geared those experiences and skill sets to that particular field, to those particular fields. Then we have educational backgrounds. So it very neatly lists the certificate that the person has achieved, as well as the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, where the person achieved those skills and those qualifications, and then the date the person graduated. And for work history, again, it very neatly and in an organized way states the position held, the company, and the dates. So it doesn't go into the details here under work history because it's highlighting more of the skills. And as we can see here, cosmetic manager and quality assurance manager, they might not necessarily be as relevant to what the person is trying to obtain now, which is a legal assistant position, as they've mentioned on the top under career objective. So this resume is used as a way for the applicant to say, yes, I do have a lot of the skills that you're looking for. I might not have the exact experience, but I have gained some experience that I can transfer into working as a legal assistant. So resume objectives, it states here that a resume objective is a short targeted statement that demonstrates your career path or position you would like to obtain. An objective details the work that you want. So an example includes retail associate. That's the position title somebody wants. And underneath that, they have mature, friendly individual seeking a part-time retail associate position at Giant Tiger, where my strong communication skills will build excellent customer relations. So this is a descriptive example of an objective, letting the employer know very clearly where the applicant sees themselves in the company, what role, as well as giving the employer an idea of a skill set or a couple skill sets, communication, and as well what they want to achieve. So their skill set includes strong communication skills, and also trying to build excellent customer relations. So under the highlights of skills section, some people will title it summary of skills, as long as it's very clear that this is a section that you would like to demonstrate your skill sets to the employer. You can change the wording as you see appropriate, but there are a few things that you can include in this section. There are hard skills. These are skills that are specific and teachable, and examples include writing, math, reading. Hard skills are usually something you've been trained to do. Then we have soft skills. So soft skills are personality-oriented or character traits. So some examples include teamwork, flexibility, patience, time management. Then we have transferable skills, and these can be used in various jobs and different areas of life. They do have a lot of, they're similar to soft skills. They include time management, communication, teamwork, listening skills. And then we have job-specific skills, which are unique to a specific job. So if there's a specific certification that's required for a job, like forklift training, or teaching skills, or anything else that comes to mind. CPR, first aid, is another skill set that some employers will look for. So if you're not too sure, or if you haven't taken some time yet to reflect on some of your skills, it's a great idea to do that so that you are confident in what you have to offer an employer, and that you can state those skills in a way that's easy for the employer to see what you're able to do when and if you work for them. It does state at the bottom here that you have to remember to highlight your qualifications that are the most important to the job, and look at the job posting to find out which skills matter. So that's a really great piece of advice, is to look at the job posting, look at the skills that the employer is looking for, and then reflect to identify if you have those skills. Okay, so your experience section. So this would include the company name, the job title, and dates of employment or volunteer experiences. Could also include a description about your job responsibilities and tasks. And it's a good place to highlight your skills and knowledge gained on the job. You can also mention any key achievements or contributions you made on the job. All resumes should contain a highlights of qualifications section. And it asks here, where should you look to see what relevant qualifications and skills to include? So as mentioned before, a great place to start would be the job posting. Another place that you can look would be the company's website, just to see if there are additional skills that you can identify that might not be listed on the job posting, but would be relevant and important for the employer to know that you have. So now we're going into a bit more specific in regards to how to state your information on a resume. So this slide is titled Quantify and Qualify. So when we talk about quantify, we're looking at the amount. So some questions to consider includes how much, how often, how many customers or coworkers, how many products, how much did you sell. It is important to quantify and consider how many things you worked with. So for example, if you volunteered at in a childcare position and you were supervising maybe 4 children ages 3 to 6, that would be an example of quantifying your experience, that you were supervising a certain amount of children at one time. Then we have qualify. So this includes the level of performance. So how did you do it? Another question to consider is, what tools did you use to perform the task? So examples include responsibly counted $5,000 worth of inventory on an Excel spreadsheet, quickly mowed lawn using mower, and made credit sales using debit machine in a timely manner. So an example of work experience, how you would structure it on the resume, includes what's listed here on the slide. So the main piece here is that the job title that the person held is listed first, daycare assistant part-time. Then the company the person worked for, which is the YMCA of GTA, is listed underneath, as well as the dates or the duration of that experience. And then underneath are some key points to help the employer visualize what this applicant did in that role. So an example is promoted health and wellness for children ages 4 to 12 through engaging and interactive activities. States at the bottom here, note, don't forget to add dates to your work experience. So again, some employers want to see how recent somebody worked in a particular job. Some people might not want to put their dates for whatever reasons, but if you can, it would be great for the employer to see how recent your experience is, if that's important for them. Okay, so education and certifications. List your educational achievements. These are really great skills and information for employers to know. It's good to include the name of the school, the city or town, the program, if applicable, and the year completed. You can include certifications in your education section as well, or you can decide to have a different section titled certifications. It's up to you. As listed on this slide, it gives a neat and organized way to demonstrate your education. So under high school, for example, it states the actual diploma name that somebody received, as well as the school name underneath, the location, and then the date the person graduated. And for certificate, it also lists in the same way the certificate name that was achieved, the company where the person achieved that certificate, the location, and the date. So for me, this is very clear for the employer to have an idea of what education and certification the person has achieved in the past. It's organized, the layout, and it's really, for me, easy to read. Okay. So I mentioned very briefly references at the beginning, and it's a good thing to be mindful of because some employers will require either 2 or 3 references. So it states here that a reference is someone who can vouch for you on what you are like as a person and what you are like to work with. It's a good idea to identify at least 3 people that will act as positive references for you. So that's a key piece here, making sure that your references will provide a positive review of how you work and how you are as an employee or as a volunteer. So some examples include teachers, guidance counselors, former coworkers or current coworkers, mentors, and current or past employers. And that can also include employers that you worked for on a volunteer basis. Prepare a separate page to list your references and title that page references. Bring your reference sheet to your interview. So again, you don't need it when you're applying necessarily, unless the employer specifies to do so. But it's a good idea, good practice to bring your reference document with you at the interview. Ensure contact information is correct and up to date. Make sure your references know you are using them as a reference. So it's always good to just touch base with your reference to make sure that they're aware that you will be providing their contact information if it's approved by them. Maybe even giving them an idea of some of the places that you're applying to, letting them know that they might expect a call or an email from an employer. Especially if you maybe you gained this reference a year or more ago and you might not have been in contact with them recently. It's good to reestablish that relationship so that they're aware that you will be sending out their information and to make sure that it's still okay with them. Avoid using family members or friends. Some employers will be specific as to who you should ask for or who you should provide as a reference. So they might ask for previous supervisors or maybe somebody that can do a character reference. But generally speaking, from my experience, family members or friends are not usually allowed for references, but the employer will be able to better tell you what they're looking for. So this is a sample of how you can state your references. So again, putting your contact information at the top as a header, and then titling this page as references. And some key information to state is the reference name, their relationship to you. So this one says previous team supervisor at the YMCA, and then also includes the dates. It includes the person's current position, a phone number, email address, and then also mentions how the person prefers to communicate, which is, to me, is a great idea. So just like your resume, very important to make sure that this information is up to date, and that, again, the reference does know that you will be submitting this to employers. So now what we'll do is we'll head over to cover letters and talk about what you need to know in regards to how to create a cover letter. Okay, so the first slide here says, what is a cover letter? So a cover letter is a document sent with your resume to provide additional information on your skills and your experience. It's essentially kind of an opener before the employer looks at the resume. A good cover letter will let the reader know very quickly that your skills and experience match their requirements. So that's the idea, that the cover letter will let the employer know that you are a suitable and strong candidate for the role. So why is it important? It states here that if your cover letter is not done properly, it can jeopardize the opportunity for you. So that's if it's not well written, or if there's a lot of mistakes, then that might not necessarily work in your favor. So it's really good to take the time to craft a well-written cover letter. It says your cover letter is your chance to speak to the hiring employer about why you are the best candidate for the job. It introduces your personal style. So where do I begin? So just like your resume, your cover letter should showcase all the ingredients you have for the recipe. Print off the job description and put a check mark beside all the skills or qualifications you meet. So this is the same technique that you would use when building the resume. And even if you don't meet all the qualifications that the employer is looking for, you can still apply to the job. I like to think about having a majority of the skills and qualifications that the employer is looking for, and then from there deciding if it's appropriate to apply for the job. So try not to be discouraged if you don't meet everything. Just really think about what the employer is looking for and decide from there. If you have a lot of what they're looking for, sending out your resume and cover letter and letting them decide if it's appropriate and if they'd like to move forward. Okay, so we'll talk about the essential parts of a cover letter. So some things to consider includes, why am I writing? So what is the purpose? What message do you want to give the employer? How am I qualified? What I have to offer the employer the position. So think about your skills, your experience, think about your education, what I know about the company, why I want to work there. So this would be a great time to think about researching companies, getting to know them a little bit more. What do they offer? What are their services? What are their products? And what do they need out of their employees? And what steps I will take to talk to you in person regarding my qualifications. So on a cover letter, you can mention to the employer what your next step will be. So maybe it's trying to coordinate an interview or an informational interview where you ask the employer a little bit more about the job. So in regards to why I am writing, in your opening paragraph, explain why you are writing to the employer. You can refer to the job posting clearly stating the job title and where it was posted. Also, if you've been referred by somebody who works for the company, you can mention that as well if it's okay with that person. An example of an opener includes 2 years of experience dishwashing makes me an ideal candidate for the position of dishwasher with Tim Hortons. How I am qualified. So this is a very important piece of information for your cover letter. It states that you need to provide specific, measurable information on how the company will benefit from hiring you. Write using short, powerful sentences providing accomplishments and or achievements that are relevant to the job you are applying to. So we really try to focus here on action words, so words that are descriptive and that really demonstrate what you have to offer and how it applies to the company and the position you're applying for. What I know about the company. So this is where your research will come into play. This is where all that effort that you took to researching the company and getting to know them a little bit more can be utilized. This paragraph will give you an edge over the competition, as it will show the employer that you are genuinely interested in working for the company. It is also a chance to pay the employer a compliment by speaking highly about the company. So what steps I will take about talking to you in person? So this is in regards to the steps that you will take to talk to the employer in person. So in this closing paragraph, you need to clearly express your desire for an interview. Express your enthusiasm and your confidence that you are the right fit for the job. Take the lead for a follow-up. So an example includes, I welcome the opportunity of a personal interview where we can discuss in greater detail how I can benefit your company. Some people will put a specific date that they will follow up with the employer. So that's up to you if you think that would be appropriate. But again, it's a good idea to let the employer know that you are writing in hopes of achieving an interview. So how should I send my cover letter? If you are sending a resume and cover letter online, you will either upload it to your online application or attach it to an email. Some employers will like to see your your cover letter and resume in one document. So this goes back to paying attention to the instructions, if any, that the employer lists on their website or the job posting. Other employers might want it in two separate documents. If you are attaching it to an email, you will need to introduce yourself and state that you are sending your resume and cover letter regarding the job posting, and that you appreciate the consideration. So essentially, if you are applying by email to an employer, the body of the email is kind of like a mini cover letter introducing the attachments, which includes your cover letter and resume. If you are handing out your cover letter in person, make sure that the copy you are handing out is clean and in an envelope or folder. So make sure that the presentation of your printed out documents looks professional, so that it's not crumpled or there's no stains or anything like that. Just making sure that it's in an envelope addressed to the employer if you can. And make sure you are dressing professionally, wearing appropriate clothing, looking neat and organized if you are going to submit your documents in person to an employer. Well, that concludes the resume and cover letter information that I would like to share. So I just wanted to thank everyone for listening, for taking the time to participate in this workshop. I hope that some of these tips and techniques you can take away with you and will be helpful to you. So I will turn it back to William.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That was a great presentation. So everybody, we're gonna give you a couple of minutes to send us some questions, and then we'll be answering them. Thanks so much. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. You can begin sending in your questions, and we will answer them. I just want to point out that in the handouts section is a resume writing guide that Natalie has provided. Actually, Natalie, did you want to speak about the writing guide?
Sure. So hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's session. In regards to the resume writing guide, it's a tool that you can refer back to with some additional tips and techniques. It should also include a lot of what was mentioned in today's session, and it gives a couple of examples of resumes and formats that you can use as well.
Okay, awesome. So we have a question here. Since I've had my education outside of Canada, is it okay or is it necessary to mention the educational credential assessment or a Canadian equivalency report in the education section of my resume?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I've come across this in the past. So I would say it's your discretion. I do think it would be a good idea to state the credential assessment on the resume. Some employers might be looking for that information. So stating the credential that you obtained outside of Canada, as well as what it has been assessed to be within Canada.
Perfect. We're actually getting a lot of questions about the PowerPoint. Is it possible to share the PowerPoint with them, with the audience?
Yeah, I'll double check to see if that we're able to do that. I'll look into that and I can get back to you on that, William.
Okay, perfect. So if Natalie's able to do that, then I will send it out to the follow-up email for all the attendees of the webinar. So we have a question. Oh, is there something called a Quebec format, or does Quebec have a different standard resume format?
Oh, that's a very good question. And to be honest, I don't have the answer for that one. I haven't encountered that throughout the time that I've been in this field. I'm just trying to think where you can get that resource. I think if you reached out to a YMCA in Quebec, they might have that answer, or any employment center within Quebec.
From what we can do at Next Stop Canada is if you contact us in our live chat, we do have French specialists who might be able to help you out with that. In the references section, can I use a reference from my previous job if it was outside of Canada?
I think that should be fine, as long as you provide contact information of that reference. So for example, maybe multiple contact information like a phone number and an email address, and that way the employer has options as to how they can connect with that person. Keeping in mind that sometimes when references are provided to an employer might come back and say that they might need an additional reference, or they might let you know that they can't use a reference for whatever reason. But generally speaking, I think that that would be fine as long as the person, the reference is easy to contact.
Okay, we have a question. Oh, is it necessary to keep the resume to a maximum of 2 pages? I think you did go over this, or can we go over?
Yes, I get this question a lot because some people will say definitively that you can't go past 2 pages. And I would say that I think the reason why that people were saying that 2-page maximum was in order to ensure that the resume is concise, but not all employers will agree to that amount. It is subjective. So I would say really try to focus on making sure the documents are concise and also reviewing any instructions that the employer has provided. So throughout this role, I have seen some instances where employers will state the total amount of pages that they will accept that includes the cover letter and resume within one document. But I don't often see employers stating maximum page amounts. It's just a few times here and there I've seen this. So really the key point is to keep it concise and focus on the key points and the skills that you'd like to convey to the employer.
Perfect. We have a question. How should we write our resume if we're applying for a position that is very different from our previous experiences?
Okay, so this would be kind of like a job change. Yeah, so again, yeah, this is something I also encounter quite a bit. So sometimes this can be challenging, but what I would suggest doing is focusing on those transferable skills that you have that would be relevant to the new type of job that you're trying to obtain, which I can appreciate might not necessarily be easy, but really trying to think back and gathering as much relevant skills that you can that will transfer over into the new role. And maybe even in the cover letter, providing a reason as to why you're interested in moving into another field and what attributes you can provide within that new field.
Perfect. Is it necessary to update our resume for every single employer that I'm targeting?
I think that the key thing here is to make sure that the resume is outlining and describing the skills and experience that are relevant to a specific job, which might mean that you do have to tailor each resume as you go. So for example, if you are looking for work as a camp counselor or a child care provider, you might not necessarily have to do a lot of tailoring because that one resume should work. You might find here and there are skills that are on the posting that you want, that you have, that you might not have included in the resume that you'd like to add. But if you are looking at jobs that are quite different, then I would say it's probably more beneficial to take that time and tailor the resume so that the employer can see that you are a good match for that job.
Next question is, if I do actually have a lot of work experience and it would make the resume more than 2 pages, should I mention all of my work experience or should I trim it down to only the work experience that's relevant to the job that I'm applying for?
Yeah, so that's very good question because I'm these are things that have come up in the job that I do, so I do encounter that as well. So yes, if you're finding that that the resume is becoming too long, it's exceeding the amount of pages that you would like to provide to the employer, and there are areas that you can reduce. So maybe there are some experiences that are not as relevant. You can decide to like not emphasize those. So sometimes what I've suggested in the past is to have a relevant experience section where you're listing and emphasizing with good details of the jobs that are relevant to what you're trying to get into, and then providing still the list of the additional jobs, but not providing as much detail of those jobs. So maybe just stating the position title, the company name, and the dates, but not necessarily the points with the description. Saving that for the jobs that you think are relevant to what you're trying to obtain, the job you're trying to obtain.
We have a question. I'm a student and I don't actually have a lot of work experience. Can I use volunteer experiences instead?
Yes, definitely. I think volunteer experience is essential, and it's still experience even if it's volunteer, even if it was volunteer. So I think that's a great technique to use, putting your volunteer experience, sorry, on your resume.
If I want to apply for a company and I actually am able to work in a couple of different positions that they have open, what should I do? Should I apply with only one resume or should I change it for each application?
So there's I see a couple of options here. So I think that if you were to provide an explanation in your cover letter, that could be one technique instead of changing the resume, unless you feel like it would be more beneficial to tailor the resume as well. So it really depends because if you if there's a lot of information that you can change on the resume to emphasize the skills and experience that you have that are specific to each of those different jobs within one organization, it might be better to do it that way. But if you feel like there's not a lot of things that you can change on your resume, that what you have on there really does um, explain and it encompasses pretty much everything, then it might be better to focus on providing more of an explanation in the cover letter. I hope that answered that question.
I think that does. Am I able to use a recommendation letter from my previous supervisor for jobs in Canada in relevant cases?
Yes, yes, definitely. If an employer is looking for a reference and you're able to provide that reference letter, I think, sorry, I think that would be an excellent idea. Yes.
We had a question here. I just lost it. 1 second. Oh, okay. So in looking up resume references online, I've seen that there are like hobbies and interests sections. Are those still relevant? Should I include my hobbies and interests?
Yeah, I'll go back to that statement. It depends. So I feel that some people use the hobbies and interests um, if, for example, they don't have a lot of experience to state on their resume. Um, so in that case, I think that that's fine if you just want to provide some more information so that the employer gets to know who you are and you feel like those hobbies and interests are in some way relevant to what you're applying to. So for example, if you were applying to work as a retail associate in a sporting goods store and your hobbies and interests are playing sports and you're part of a team and you've been on a team for a while, then in that case, I would say that would be a great idea to include that. If you have a lot of information already on your resume and you don't think that your hobbies and interests will really contribute more than what you already have, then you might not necessarily want to add it there. But I think that they're fine to state as long as they are as long as they match or in some way are relevant to what job you're trying to obtain.
Perfect. Can you speak to how important a cover letter is and how we should provide them? Do we send them in with our resume or do we send them in separately?
Yes, I've had that question before regarding the importance of the cover letter because um, sometimes I get the sense that it kind of feels more like kind of repetitive from the resume. And it's hard to say how many employers are going to really read all the details of the cover letter. But I say, include it regardless of whether or not the employer is going to read it, because in that, chance that they do read it, you want to have a well-crafted resume, cover letter. And there's different ways to submit the cover letter. So some employers will state specifically on the job posting to include it within the same attachment as the resume. So they want only one attachment by email as an example that should include the cover letter and the resume. Some places will ask for it into separate documents. So what I've seen on on online applications, sometimes I'll see that they'll ask for the cover letter and resume to be attached separately. So I think the best thing I can say is review the instructions by the employer. And if they don't provide the instructions, then it's at your discretion as to if you want to put the resume and cover letter together or separately. And if they don't ask for a cover letter, I think it shows that you're going above and beyond if you do include a well-crafted cover letter.
I think anecdotally, from my own experience, it probably doesn't hurt to attach a cover letter even if they don't ask it, right?
Yes, yeah, I would say if
Yeah.
they don't ask for it, I think it's a good idea to still include that because it shows that you're taking that time, that effort, and I think it does show that going above and beyond approach. Yeah.
Yeah. Several of my past managers have told me that a cover letter helped me stand out when I was applying, just because,
Okay.
yeah, it does stand out
That's
when
awesome.
they don't ask for it.
Yeah,
Um,
and then I would say, like, if you are having that cover letter, make sure that you're really tailoring it to the job, and not necessarily just making it on the generic side, but focusing on making it relevant and specific to the place you're applying to.
yeah, really look at what the job posting is saying and use the words that they're looking for.
Mhm.
Um, when we are applying, should we attach certificates or credentials with the resume, or should we wait until they request them?
I would suggest waiting until they request them. As long as you've stated them on the resume, I think that should be fine for the application. And then if the employer is moving forward with you as an applicant, if they feel it's necessary to review those, then they'll ask you for it at that time. So I think you could wait.
Okay. So we do have 3 minutes left before it's 10, so we're coming to the end of the webinar. So before I let Natalie have her last word, I'm going to show everyone some upcoming webinars. So next Wednesday, June 24th, we have Networking for an Effective Job Search. We will have a guest presenter from FastVC who will teach you all about the benefits of and techniques for networking in Canada while job searching. And then on June 25th, which is next Thursday, we have Your First Weeks in Canada. That webinar will go over many things that you'll want to do in your first weeks here in the country, such as how to apply for important documents, finding relevant community services in your area. Also, before you go, we'd like to ask you to fill out your feedback form. This will help us improve our webinars as well as our other services. And that is it from me. So before we go, Natalie, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
I just wanted to say thank you again for joining today's session. And the last thing that I can think of is that might be helpful because I know there's a lot of different information about resumes and cover letters, and it's hard to know exactly what to state and how to prepare those documents. I guess the best thing I can leave with is just try to put yourself in the situation of the employer, in the mindset maybe of the employer, and think, what if you were hiring and you were looking for a candidate, what would you want to see? What would you appreciate seeing on a resume and cover letter? And hopefully that will provide a bit of guidance as well.
It's great advice. Thank you so much for the presentation, Natalie. And thank you everyone for coming. So have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, day or night. Thank you so much for coming. Goodbye, everyone.